Hi there, everyone. My guest this time is a great guy and one of my favorite people in radio, actually. His name's Rudy Maxa. There are three main travel show hosts in America. There's Rick Steves, there's Peter Greenberg, and there's Rudy. He's the son of an army colonel. So when he was young, Rudy was constantly moving around, which sowed the seeds for his travel career later on. But before that, his first career was as an investigative reporter for the Washington Post, where he came this close to winning a Pulitzer Prize. Then, somehow he morphed into this whole travel thing, where he's been ever since. I met him because I used to be a reporter on his public radio show, The Savvy Traveller, and I found him to be just the most professional, capable and knowledgeable person. Really sweet and generous, too. Nowadays, his TV show, Rudy Maxa's World, is shown, all over the world. And his weekly syndicated radio show is on, 200 radio stations all over America. Maybe even more. He's very successful. In the first half of the show, we talk about what it's like to be a travel reporter, since that's something I know a little about. We talk about his tumultuous young life with his strict father, who kind of turned him into a tidiness freak when he got older. We talk about failed relationships, and also his run-in with Larry Flynt, when Larry Flynt had his come-to-Jesus moment, and rivalries between travel hosts, Rick Steves, Peter Greenberg, and so on. Then, in the second half of the show, Rudy answers the life quiz. 3 rounds of questions about life, living, and lessons learned. If you know his work, then you love him already, and you'll be fascinated by this revealing look at who he really is. If you don't know him, I'm pretty sure that by the end, you'll come to love him like the rest of us do. Either way, this interview felt like a real win-win to me. It's so good. And it starts now. Enjoy.
Why are we here?
What's it all about?
What's the point of being alive?
What will be my legacy?
Where do we go after we die?
The Life Quiz.
The Life Quiz.
Secrets to a happy and fulfilled life revealed by the famous, the fascinating, or the just plain fabulous.
Hosted by Cash Peters.
Cash Peters.
What is outstanding about you is that in all the years that I've known you and all the years that I've worked in radio, I have never heard anybody say a bad word about you.
Well, that's quite amazing. I hope I'm a nice guy, and I hope I'm considerate of others, but certainly before I went into radio and I was a Washington Post investigative reporter and so on, there were a lot of people who said not nice things about me. Believe me.
Well, because you were investigating them.
Yes. My first scandal story as a young reporter at the Post involved a congressman, and it cost him. He tried to commit suicide. He failed after the story came out. And I wrote that piece with a Washington Post reporter named Marion Clark. And I don't know how long, I can't remember, because this was back in 1976 I wrote this piece. She had a boyfriend who was a private pilot. She was going on his plane, he was flying, her mother was with them, and they landed at the airport. And she was in a hurry to go to the bathroom, and her boyfriend, the pilot, allegedly, from what he said, wait till we taxi to the... No, I'm just going to get out. And she got out on the wing, and instead of going backwards, she leapt forward, and you can't see the propeller spinning at high speed, and she was decapitated in front of her mother. And I remember years later that the New York Times was doing whatever happened to Congressman Wayne Hayes from Ohio, that big sex scandal that the Washington Post broke years ago. And he was interviewed on his farm in northern Ohio. And he said, well, did you hear about what happened to one of those reporters? That leaves only one snake left. That was me. I took that to mean he wasn't nuts about me.
But I don't know how you get to be from that guy who did investigative reporting, which is, you were... nominated for awards and stuff for that, right?
Yeah,
you for big time awards.
Missed the Pulitzer by one vote for the story I just described, but who remembers that, Cash?
Yeah, but does it irk you that you actually ended up in travel?
No, not at all. It's like running into a doctor at a party. Everybody wants to talk about travel. They either just went someplace, or they're dreaming of one place, or they want to know about one place. It is phenomenal. People's interested in travel. So it's never a dull moment. And there's so many places to go. There's so many places I haven't been.
So you're really not jaded?
No, I don't take a lot of press trips or, these junkets with a lot of reporters, and they're just dreadful. You go to a hotel. Now we're going to show you the meeting rooms, and now you have to go over here. Now you have to go over there. And I did a couple of those when I was just starting in travel. I had no idea about that world. And I think if I had a lifetime of that, and some travel reporters do because they live for these free trips, that I would probably be either jaded or simply bored out of my skull.
See, that's what I wanted to do, weirdly. I liked those junkets. I wish
Well,
somebody would pay for me to go on junkets and report back, because I went on the few of them,
Right.
and honestly, I had the best time, because I was really reporting on the people I was with. I reported on
Right.
the reporters, and they were all having sex with one another, and they were all falling ill, and I just reported on them, and we had the best time.
I have read articles along those lines that to me are wildly amusing. I just took a junket. It's the only one I've taken this in recently, I think. I took the Queen Mary 2 on a jazz cruise to London. Now, I agreed readily because my granddaughters live in London, and it was a free trip to London, so I was happy to go. But it was interesting because I hadn't taken a transatlantic cruise since I was a little army brat kid, and all I remember was all I had was warm milk, so I never wanted to go on another cruise. But it was very interesting, not the least because it was a Blue Note Records jazz cruise, and so there were a lot of jazz singers and performers, I think most of whom were black. And so the regular Cunard sailors, particularly the Brits, were like, sort of, what is going? I know that there was a woman down at the purser's desk going, "This will simply be the last Cunard cruise I can tell. I don't know what is going on here."
Okay, so you get
and
back
I
home.
love that.
You get
Yeah.
back home.
Right.
You're going to talk about that because they expect you to, because they gave you a free trip to England. What do you say? I bet it's different to what I would say, but what do you say? You have to be blandly appreciative because it was free, right?
And I say that I was a guest. I never indicate that I was some rich guy who could afford to take the Queen Mary to England. But I actually paid my dues up front before the cruise. I do a weekly radio show that's on about 220 news talk stations, a 2-hour travel show. And we did tape the show on the ship before it sailed.
Nice.
And so I, had the chef on talking about how many thousands of pounds of meat and how much they serve in a year. And I had the CEO of the company happened to be there, of Carnival Cruises, which owns Cunard. I didn't know. And so we sort of did a show before I got on.
My point is, I think, could you have gone on there?
I'm still going to write about it
and hated it,
Yes.
and said so.
Yes, I could have. They already got a 2-hour nationwide show. So they didn't expect anything from me. They still don't expect anything from me, but I will do something in the newsletter because I thought the clash of cultures was very interesting. The regular cruisers who wear tuxedos on formal nights and like to go to the tea dances, and then you had this sort of hipper group that was there for the jazz. So I like that clash of cultures.
Because we just come back off a cruise. We went to Portugal on a river cruise, as a matter of fact.
Well, that was your second one then?
Third. But
I finally took a river cruise last summer on a Viking. It was a champagne cruise, so we hardly cruised. I think we were on the water 4 hours in a week. But it was terrific. I loved it.
River cruising is actually very, very good. But the trouble is these boats are like floating senior centres.
Yes, at 66, I did bring the average age down, I think.
You've been the youngest person on the entire ship, I'm sure. But I think my point I'm trying to get at is that there has to be a side to you, like an invisible backpack you're wearing, that if only you were to unload it.
Where I put the anger, where I put the resentment.
The despair and the frustration and that feeling of, oh my God, why am I still doing travel?
Look, you met Anna once, my girlfriend. We were here for your Christmas party, I believe, one year.
Yes.
Wonderful. I was terrifically in love with her, and I thought she was the one. And she had some other thoughts a couple years ago, and I was pretty heartbroken. So rain does fall into my life. But here's how I deal with adversity. I had a high school girlfriend, but then after my freshman year, I was working in Cleveland, Ohio, and she came to visit me. By then, I had lost my virginity, and we had sex. And about a month or two later, she called me. She was living in New York or Washington somewhere. And she said, "I'm pregnant." And I was my first year of college finished. I don't have any money. My family did have money. They weren't going to give it to me. And I was like, what do I do here? And I remember thinking, if I can get through this, if this can work out happily, I will never really be upset about much more in my life, because this was such a serious thing to me, bringing an at the time, unwanted life into the world. Well, it turns out she wasn't pregnant. And from then on, that's my yardstick. When somebody says, "I'm really pissed off about this, my boss said that," I go, it's life. So I measured up against that. Am I bringing unwanted life into the world? No. This is no huge life decision.
No, but if you are, say, whatever that story is with Anna, if you were dumped or if you had tribulations that way.
I did. I seriously did, yes.
Okay, so that takes you into a realm of emotional experience that you can't just rationalize your way out of.
No, I didn't. I did not go on a date for a year. I lost about 25 pounds, which was fabulous, actually. But, I think it's being self-employed, you still have to put food on the table. I couldn't slack off in my job because I get a check every 2 weeks anyway. I had to keep my eye on the ball to pay my bills.
Yeah, but when you go through your life story and through your professional history particularly, it strikes me that you have been quite blessed, really. That
have been.
very rarely do you get attacked. I mean, okay, you may have annoyed certain people, but very rarely do people say, oh, he's no good, or he's a hound, or that piece he did was terrible. The only thing I ever found was some book you wrote where everybody seemed to hate it.
I didn't like it even. I would have criticized
But you
it.
wrote it.
What had happened is All the President's Men had just come out and been a huge bestseller. So we were supposed to do a book on Washington scandal. It was called Public Trust, Private Lust, Sex, Power, and Corruption on Capitol Hill. And we got slammed for it, and deservedly so.
What's interesting, people don't know that you and I worked together. I mean, I was on your show. You had this show called The
Very
Savvy
often.
Traveller on public radio, and I was a reporter for that. Not a very good reporter.
You were a terrific reporter.
I went on junkets, and I had a great time, and I came back and reported on the reporter.
But it was the Bad Taste Tour, right?
Well, that and other things. You sent. I got 40 death threats after one of my pieces on The Savvy Traveller. The highest ever from a public radio.
What was the story?
You'd sent me to Kilmainham Jail in Ireland.
Yeah.
And
Was
really
that in Northern Ireland?
No.
No. Okay.
In Dublin, probably. And instead of focusing on what really was the story, which was how there'd been terrible disease there and the prisoners had died and these terrible, terrible conditions they lived in, I focused more on how it could be redecorated.
Why would anybody
Why
call
would
it
the
a death
Irish
threat?
care about that? So
Okay.
people in Boston heard it and were furious and threatened to break my knees, and there were all sorts of different things. But also, talking of the sex thing, I remember you once sent me to Monte Carlo for some reason. And I got to my hotel room, and it was at the L'Ermitage, right at the harbour there, right?
Overlooking the harbour. Right.
It's fantastic. And my room was one of those suites where it's split in two and the door's locked. So you can have one half and somebody else can rent the other half, right? And I get into my room and I put my luggage down and take my tape recorder out and do all the stuff I do to prepare for whatever I was doing. And there's a couple having sex in the bath in the next half of the suite. And so what I did was, I thought, well, this will be good on the radio. So what I did was, I took my microphone and I ran it under the intervening door, whatever those doors are, the connecting door, and I fed it and fed it and fed it until I had no more cable left. And recorded the whole thing. And then gradually pulled it back out again.
Oh, my goodness.
But I can't understand, though, why I got jaded and you didn't. And one article there is about you says, oh, that's because he was an army kid, which you mentioned, that we're always traveling, we always go to different places, and that sowed a seed, and now I can't get out of that. Is that still the reason?
Well, I think so, yes. I'll go anywhere. I mean, I just had dinner with a friend visiting from Washington who's Japanese, and he was here with an Armenian friend, and we went to an Armenian restaurant in Glendale. And another Armenian came along who I did not know. And by the end of dinner, we liked each other so much. He said, I'm getting married next summer in Armenia. Will you come over? Absolutely. So I'm going to see an Armenian wedding. I guess I'm just endlessly curious about places and people still, so I'm not jaded, no.
Would there be a point, though, where you would go, I'm done? It's just what happened to me, really. It was just, I was just done. I had nothing left to say that could be said without risking losing sponsorship or, or just people complaining.
But you wouldn't be doing these podcasts if you had nothing left to say.
No, but I'm doing this on my own dime. There's nobody sponsoring this.
Right.
I can say whatever I like and I'm fine. Whereas if I were on real radio, I found that the limits were too narrow in the end, and the television particularly so. We'd go and do something great and I would just go, I really hate this place. Let's go on and say I hate this place. And then Travel Channel, I assume behind the scenes, would go, if we run that, none of our reporters is ever going to be able to go back to Uganda or whatever it is. So we've got to doctor it, or we've got to change it, or we've got to cancel this show. And that's really was too narrow for me. I just couldn't deal with it.
I haven't felt hemmed in by that.
No, because you're too nice.
No,
you're so generous.
I lost a major sponsor for the radio show, and not because I was mean, but just because they didn't like that I interviewed somebody who was in the same business as they were. And I was like, "What? That's the editorial part of the show. You're an advertiser. What are you doing?" And on public television, I sometimes feel if the place is terrible, why do it? I mean, why encourage anybody to go there or not go there?
Is that your job, to encourage people to go there?
I want to encourage people to travel and experience new cultures, yeah. If while I'm there I do something that I think was a dud, I just don't put in the show.
See, I would focus on the
I
dud.
know.
That's
But you
what
have
really
a sharper
interests me.
sense of humor than I do. You would make it funny. I would just make it bad. But
I
you would
find
make it
it
amusing.
fascinating. I find it fascinating when the thing goes wrong.
Of course.
And, like, for example, I once did a ski trip. And in those days, I was very, very, very diligent. And I took my tape recorder with me everywhere. It just was by my bedside. If I went out to the bathroom, I had it with me in case something caved in or something happened. Or the toilet had a funny ring to it in the middle of the night or whatever. I was really, really diligent. And I remember I went to this ski resort in Austria. It was a fantastic junket, this thing. I mean, it really was one of those great, great, great junkets. And I get down to breakfast, and I'm in the resort, and I've got my tape recorder with me, as always, and I'm sitting there, the first one down to breakfast, and the pat of butter that's on the table is just like no lid on, it's just sitting on a little tray, has a pubic hair sticking out of it.
Oh, jeez. Yes.
Now, of course,
you felt compelled to report that?
Oh, yeah. In fact, this became the entire focus of my report, because what's more fascinating than that? And so I complained to the manager, recording the whole thing. I said, why is there I was like your Washington Post guy, only I was doing it about pubic hairs.
On butter, right?
On butter. And he was so appalled. But of course I was recording it, so that obviously he had to be really appalled,
right,
that he went and made all the waitresses take their knickers down to check whose it was, so they could fire the person.
Oh, my!
This was in the 80s.
Now that's worth a story.
Isn't it great?
Yes.
And then there was a fight broke out, and then windows were smashed in the resort, and I was running around taping all these people having a fight and whatever. And then I got demoted from the beginner's class in skiing down to basically like babies just out of the womb. They were better than I was. I just was so wussy, I got stuck on the hillside and was screaming I couldn't get down, and somebody had to come and get me. And all this made a really fantastic piece.
Sure, of course.
So I go back, I put it together for Capital Radio in London, actually. I go and put it together, and Capital comes to me and goes, we can't play this. There's no way we can put this out, because we'll offend our sponsor. And I go, yeah, but it's what happened. And they go, it doesn't matter. This is not about truth. This is about money. Either take that out, or we don't play it. And there was no way of presenting what was left without the fighting, the pubic hair, or the really silly relegation to babies just out of the womb. There was no way.
Right.
And I thought, I don't know how I can negotiate this, the rules in this, and navigate what I'm supposed to do. And in the end, I felt that with a TV show. I felt that with radio stuff.
Well, on public television, it's just the opposite. I can't mention any sponsors. For example, Leading Hotels of the World came in as a major sponsor for the first 13 shows when I renamed the series and began owning it myself, called Rudy Maxa's World. And they said, well, of course, you're not staying in any Leading Hotels of the World, are you? And I said, well, it would be nice. No, you can't mention any sponsors. So I can't even offend them, because I can't even go near them. I mean,
no, but it's a minefield when you want to be able to say, here's what happened to me. Realistically. In fact, when I propose that to somebody, they go, no, that can never be done. So it can't be done. You can't. It can't do what you actually want to do, which is just tell the truth about what happened to you. And which is what I think the difference is between tourism and travel. I think you are presenting tourism, not travel. And I was presenting travel, not tourism.
Well, I can see your point there. But I do remember writing about a hotel in Miami Beach where I stayed, and there was an enormous wad of pubic hair in the shower when my girlfriend found out, and I wrote about it. I went and told the manager, and he didn't seem to be all that interested in it. So I said, okay, I'll write about it. So I wrote about it, and I never heard from them again.
Do you feel that there's a constant rivalry between the other two members of the triumvirate of the television travel gang, which is Rick Steves and Peter Greenberg?
Peter Greenberg.
I mean, there's only three people we know, and you're one of them, the other two. Are you constantly neck and neck vying for the public attention?
I don't think so, because really the only two who have regular shows on public television are me and Rick Steves.
Yeah, but Peter Greenberg is on CBS now, so he's a big deal, right?
I guess. I don't have a TV that gets CBS, so I don't see him ever. I did.
Was it jealousy? Did you get rid of CBS because you hate Peter Greenberg so much?
No, I just don't have cable. I'm so rarely at home, and I don't watch much TV, so when I began my single life, I bought a big screen TV, but I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I've been trying to get to Los Angeles for decades, as I think you may know. And so I bought this $2,500 TV 2 years ago. It is still sitting in my living room in the box, unopened, because it's got styrofoam and wires, and I don't want to take it out because I'm moving to L.A.
You are?
What I'm waiting for is to get underwriting for another television series so I have enough money in the bank to feel comfortable.
Well, by the time you get here, that television could be bought for about $599.
Oh, my friends have already said send to the Smithsonian. So I haven't had a TV for a long time, and then I was walking through Best Buy about 6 months ago, and I saw a much smaller, desk-sized TV for like $250. I thought, okay, I got it. So I've got it. So I've got Netflix on it, Hoodoo and Vudu and all that. But I don't get ABC, NBC, CBS, and public television.
Well, Netflix, Hoodoo, and Vudu. Wow, you're so hip. Hoodoo
well, that's
and
all
Vudu.
I get. That's all I get.
But do you never get a longing to do something with real edge? Where you can really vent, and it won't matter about scarring your reputation?
Yes, I do. I do feel that way sometimes.
Because if you began like that,
Right.
Surely that must still be within you. You can't possibly have had those kind of chops in the 70s and 80s and now suddenly be
Yes,
without
because
them.
I do approach travel reporting as a reporter, getting people's names spelled right and getting facts, and in some cases looking for things people didn't want me to find. So yes, I do have that training. I do. But I honestly will say, you are much more clever than I am.
Oh, Rudy,
in that regard.
honestly, if I were clever, I'd still have a job.
No, that's not true. You do just fine. If you didn't have any food on the table, I'd say, yes, you're a loser and I'm sorry for you. But that's not true.
I'm not cleverer than you at all, by any means.
Well, maybe we're each clever in a different way.
Well, what you have that I don't have is you are doggedly persistent. You are an incredible hard worker. You have, as far as I can tell, tremendous confidence in yourself. Whereas my self-esteem is at rock bottom.
Oh, come on.
I face nothing but rejection and everybody hates me.
I don't believe that for a heartbeat.
Those sort of issues I'm not a great one for putting myself out there. I have never applied for a job that I recall in my life, except maybe my very first one.
Yeah,
But
my first one too, same thing.
I've never applied for a job. It's always been people coming to me and saying,
Me
we
too.
heard you on this, we'd like you to do this. When that stopped, I was not motivated in any way to go and say, well, actually,
Excuse me, I'm
you
here.
stopped calling. Yeah, I'm still here. And so I just retired and gave up. That's something that you and I don't have in common.
Well,
Whereas
I
you're
can't-
not a giving up type.
I'm not, and I would be bored if I gave up, and I can't afford to give up.
Yeah, but you're fabulously successful. How can you even be worried about money at this point?
Are you kidding me?
Oh,
my
Rudy,
God.
come on. You're on television all over the world. You've got books you write for magazines. You've got a podcast. How can you possibly be even concerned about
public
money?
television doesn't pay anything. I have to raise all the money, and
But you do raise it. You have sponsors.
I haven't raised any in the last 3 years. I was married. I had 2 children. They started in nursery school and private school and finished in, elite colleges where it's $50,000 a year, which doesn't sound like much now, but it was back then. You multiply 2 kids by 16 years of education in private schools, 32 years of private schools. It's an extraordinary amount of money. I mean, I love my kids and they've done well, and I hope the education served them well. But man, it's a lot of money.
So-
and journalists don't get paid all that much. I mean, the Post was probably $80,000 a year. True, that was 20 years ago. So yeah, I did very well by journalist standards, but not enough to, given a couple houses and divorce and that sort of thing.
But people will project onto you.
Yes, well, they think it's
given
about
how well known you are and how successful
yes,
you've been.
because I have 91 shows that they see me a lot on public television. They go, oh, he's on television. People think people who are on television are wealthy, and I'm not. I don't lack for anything. I mean, I'm not driving a Porsche or anything, but I don't feel any need to. There's no luxury I feel I'm denying myself.
As Rick Steves got handmaidens and mansions and...
I don't know where he lives, but he is a millionaire. Not because of his TV shows, but because he started about 10 years before I did. He started a tour company. His TV shows are loss leaders for his tour company. His tour company, Rick Steves Tours, I guess it's called, almost every day of the year, a plane full of Rick Steves people are leaving on a tour. He's got an enormous tour company. So the TV shows are like loss leaders for him. I remember we were having dinner once here in L.A., actually. Apps for phones were new. And I said, oh, how much, are you making any money on the apps? He said, well, I don't charge for apps. I just give it away. And I said, yeah, that's right. You can afford to give it away. He flies around the country doing fundraising shows for public television. But he doesn't charge them. I mean, because he can afford to do it. And
Wow.
I can't afford to do that. If a TV station in Houston says, come do a TV show, they have to pay my expenses, my hotel and my airfare, and sometimes a fee if they are willing to do it.
So maybe that's where you went wrong.
I didn't
Maybe
start a
the
tour
Rudy
company.
Maxa tour company would have done very well.
I probably would have wanted to start it younger, though. And I also can't imagine. Talk about being nibbled to death by fish. Can you imagine how many people on those tours aren't happy at times because they didn't like their hotel room, the other guy got the view, and they call Rick. Now, I'm sure he's got a staff that handles all those calls because
Right.
there's no way Rick could. But I would if somebody buys a DVD from my website and it doesn't work or something, I call them back personally and make sure it's fixed. I can't afford a staff to handle that. I often get calls saying, oh, I can't see the second show. It doesn't work. And so then they'll walk to their DVD. I'll walk them through it on the phone, say, okay, now hit the thing that says menu. Now see the second show. Now highlight that and press, Rick doesn't have to do that. He's got a staff that does that. Peter, I think, makes a lot of money. I'm very close friends with Peter. I know him very well.
And you love him?
And I love him, and he tends to spend all the money he makes.
On?
Boats and real estate. And
Oh, really?
I don't know the intricacies of his finances, but I'm perfectly happy. So I don't.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what?
Would I
really,
like to make $1 million a year? Sure.
I find this exhausting, though, because I never had that kind of ambition. When I was a teenager, I made a decision. It was one of those decisions that you make as a teenager and then you can't figure out why you did it. That I wanted to not necessarily live long. That wasn't the priority. But I wanted to live broad. I wanted to experience things. I wanted to walk down that street and see what happened. I wanted to sit in that cafe and experience this thing. And so everything was about experience. Whenever I was offered work as a reporter, it wasn't because, oh, I must make money because I have to pay the bills. I would rather starve than do something that I'm not interested in. And I would go, oh, that's interesting, and off I would go and do it. And the only time I actually gave up, really, was when I was doing things for the third and fourth time, and it wasn't an experience anymore. And when I see people striving and struggling and working so hard to make money and to become famous and to get power in a certain industry, it exhausts me at a cellular level. I'm going, can't you just live your life and enjoy it?
You made a big decision at a young age, which is good. I do occasionally do pieces that I'm not – I mean, I just did a piece for Sotheby's Magazine on – I interviewed Jesse Ventura. Well, I interviewed him for a Q&A 3 years ago. But it's a lot of work. I mean, I have to do some research, and then I actually want to transcribe it because he's very litigious. I don't trust somebody else doing it. And he's fine. I mean, it wasn't hard work, but I occasionally do pieces I wouldn't normally want to do if I woke up one morning and thought, what should I do today? You said you wanted to have experiences. I wanted to be able
to live.
I wanted to be able to ask anybody anything. I wanted to be the first to tell someone something. People say, how'd you know you were a reporter? I said, I knew it when I was 9 years old. And I lived in Fort Knox, Kentucky. My father was an Army officer there. And on Army posts, people drive, 15 miles an hour is considered reckless driving. And one day I saw a fender bender in front of my house. And there was nobody home. People were at work. Nobody was around. So I had to report it. So I wrote these handwritten...
You didn't go and help the people in the accident. You just actually reported
nobody needed any help. It was like at 5 miles. There was nothing. It was, it was something knocked against a... But I wrote that these two cars, and I put these little individual papers I hand printed on like 10 houses' doors, so when they came home that night, they'd know what had happened they had missed on the street. And now I want to be the first person to tell someone about someplace great to go, or some cool restaurant, or some great hotel, or some island they've never heard of, or how to save $500 going to Asia. Now with the internet, I'll say, oh my gosh, this just happened in Paris, or this just happened there. They go, oh yeah, I know that. I saw that 10 minutes ago on the internet.
But will you retire then? Or will you do this till you drop?
I'd like to think
You're
I'd
like
do
the
it.
Betty White of travel.
I think I would like to... I think I'd like to do it till I drop. I mean, I can't imagine getting too bored by it.
But in every other industry, and I really felt this, to be perfectly honest with you, there comes a point where the people coming up behind you are young enough to be your grandchildren.
No question.
And they're looking at you. They look at you and go,
too.
why is that guy still here? And there's that entitlement that comes with being 22.
See, that's their problem, though. Not mine. Not
Well, it
yours.
becomes your problem because once your boss is 30, he's looking at you going, they're right. You shouldn't be here. By now, you should be out to pasture. What happens if that happens to you?
But you didn't really, you keep saying you're retired. You wrote a book about your, these are just things I know about. You wrote a book.
I retired from radio. I became a regular sort of just writer
Okay,
guy.
but you work as the spirit moves you and as your curiosity moves you. I mean, you...
Yes, but I put myself in a position where no guy of 25 can say, why is that guy here? I was offered a job, actually, about a year and a half ago, where a very, very good friend of mine who happens to run a TV network took us out for dinner deliberately to say, would you like to do this particular job? It would have paid a lot of money. And I said no, because everybody else in that room is going to be 30. And I turned him down for that reason. He said, no, it won't be like that. Yes, it would, because I've been through that personally. I know what it's like. And so there comes a point where the world just drags the rug out from under you. And then you go, I am an old guy.
Well, no question, I'm an old guy. I haven't felt the rug pulled out, and I'm still in demand, so I guess we'll see. I don't know. It's unanswerable, I guess.
All right. Okay, but I have one last question to ask you.
Yes.
I've left this till last because I'm scared of your answer. All right? You brought out a newsletter, and it's packed with information about travel.
Right.
And all your listeners, I guess, go, oh, he does a newsletter. I must subscribe to this. And they just get it in their mail.
It's free, and not many people subscribe, but okay.
Okay, but let's just say hypothetically they do.
Right.
I bet Rick Steves has millions of his newsletters.
Well, he sends out his catalogs for travel, and millions of people.
We've got to find out what his secret is. That's where you should be an investigative reporter. Find out what he does right, and we'll just do the same thing.
I know what he does right. Okay.
Anyway,
so what did you learn?
What I learned was how angry you got because I unsubscribed from your newsletter. to my shame.
Because
hear the question out. Right.
You did. You unsubscribed.
So I unsubscribed from your newsletter.
And I called you and said, what?
Oh, you did more than that. I unsubscribed because I never read newsletters.
Okay.
And it doesn't in any way disparage the quality of the newsletter. I just simply never read them.
Right. I do try to make them interesting.
I'm sure they're fascinating, but I unsubscribed.
Okay.
And I unsubscribed thinking, well, it's a computer thing, so it's
Right.
not a personal slight. I'm not doing it because I hate you. I'm just
never
doing it
know,
because I
right?
never read it. So I get this very, very dark voicemail from Rudy talking in way lower octaves than he is talking today, saying, "That's not what friends do."
But I was kidding, partly.
No, you weren't.
Yes, I was.
You were deadly serious. And then you go, "I spoke to one of your producers once, and she said he doesn't help anybody. He only looks after himself." There was just 2 messages like that. I thought you'd
that might have
exhausted
been
the
the
topic
shot,
once, and then I get another one from you about 2 days later saying, "And by the way..."
I was probably pissed off because in Washington, everybody writes a book, right? And I would get invited to book parties. And protocol in Washington is you buy the damn book. So I was always buying these books that, as you say, you never read news. I said, I can't read all these books. But they were by people I knew, so I'd buy them, I'd get the autograph, and I'd put it on the shelf or give it to somebody
Well,
else.
you're incredibly loyal that way. That's what's so wonderful about you. Why people like you is that they could have no better champion. If they need somebody on their side, you can call Rudy and he will write a thing. I mean, if you call me and say, "Look, I'm writing a book and I need some kind of blurb for it," I'm there. I'm your guy.
Right.
Because that's a thing that friends do and they're dedicated to helping you. But reading your newsletter is not...
You don't have to read it. You just have to delete it. That's all.
But that brought
we
out
were
in you some
It
level
did.
of
It did.
deep venom.
Well, we were just starting, and you get a thing from the platform for the newsletter that shows you bad addresses or people who decided not to continue. I still go into that because about 15 or 20% of those names there are people who either I or my producer mistyped their email address. So I go in to catch that. I constantly catch friends I put on there. Oh, no wonder they didn't get it. And I saw Cash Fuse. I thought, "I have a right email address." I went, "Oh my God, Cash got the email. Cash loves me. I love Cash." I was like hurt. I wasn't that hurt, but I was.
You're
it
a
didn't
little
ruin
hurt.
my day.
Oh,
but I thought, what a great way to call him up and bust his chops.
Oh my God! It was like I spoke to your editor. Okay, I got that out of my system. Let's move on.
All right, fire these questions.
All right,
here.
so we'll be back in a moment with the live quiz.
The Life Quiz is brought to you by Penner Press, a boutique publisher with a global mission to expand minds and change lives. Penner Press publishes books that the big boys would never dare, including 2 of Cash Peter's most popular works, A Little Book About Believing and Why Your Life Matters, available as ebooks and in paperback. The future is being made right now, so check out books by Penners today and dare to start living the bold, bright, healthy new life you know you deserve. Penner Press. Now, back to the Life Quiz.
Okay, we're back with the live quiz with my old buddy. This is what journalists say, right?
Well, it's true in
Rudy
our case.
Maxa. Basically what it is, it's a way of finding out about life, living, and lessons learned from people who've actually been around the block a few times. But before we get to it, there's one question I ask everybody. What's the number one lesson life has taught you?
I think that I understood early on, courtesy of Ben Bradley, the executive editor of the Washington Post, the Watergate editor. I started the Post 3 days after I graduated from college, and his motto was life isn't fair. So when things go wrong, when I don't get a speech or something goes wrong and it's a misunderstanding, but not my fault, I go, life isn't fair. I understand that. Not everything's going to work out perfectly, no matter how good a person, kind of person, giving a person, considerate a person you are.
But I don't think, though, that you can, unless you're a semi-robot, intellectualize yourself out of a situation like that.
No, but in the long run, it'll make me feel better. I'll attribute it to, as I say, life its own self. It's just the way life is.
So you deal with it emotionally in the moment, but
Yes.
long term, you intellectualize
remember,
it.
yeah, I certainly remember things like that. Yeah, I mean, I don't dwell on them, and it's water under the bridge.
But there must be things in your past that there's still a negative charge attached to.
Oh, of course. I can't imagine getting to 66 and that not being true. Yeah.
Right. So how have you worked through those? Or do you still harbor the grudges or pain or wounds or whatever they are?
No, I mean, I have wounds from a romance. My father had a stroke at a very young age and was paralyzed and spent a year in the hospital. When he came out, he was a very different man because back then they didn't have lasers for brain stuff. He took off half his head and touched all these parts of his brain, and he was a totally different man.
Now, how did your mother deal with it?
It was very difficult for all the family. He would turn violent, but he couldn't move very fast, so he couldn't actually hit anybody. But my bedroom door in Bethesda, Maryland, had this piece of wood over it where he tried to use an axe to get into my bedroom to yell at me about something. And police would come to the house. It was, those were tough days.
Yeah, but when you read about somebody being a neat freak, which is said
Well,
about
the
you in
Colonel.
something, that's where I immediately go to is like, this is fear. So what are you afraid of, actually?
Well, my father was very strict. The colonel was very strict. And
Before he had the stroke?
Yeah, before. He was pretty fair, though. He was strict but fair. I knew the rules. After the stroke, the rules were weird. They didn't ever say the same, and I didn't understand any of it. You know, an army posts are very buttoned-down places, and every week I'd have to police the area. If I could find a silver piece of a gum wrapper embedded in between two blades of grass, it was amazing, because nobody litters on an army post. And I would wash the car every week, and he would come out with a white glove and run it across the top of the door and say, "You call this vehicle clean, soldier? And I'll be back in 10 minutes."
But you weren't a soldier.
Well, I was a soldier in his army, apparently.
In his own personal army.
Polish his shoes, and that was a lot of work.
And what happened if you did fall down in that kind of way? What was the
Well, it
punishment?
was just, he never hit me or anything. It wasn't violent, and I don't know. It was just mad. He was my father. I wanted to please him. I wanted to obey. I remember once having a bowl of ice cream, like just before I went to bed, and I rinsed out the bowl in a spoon, and I went to bed, and 15 minutes later, the lights get thrown on. He goes, "Is that your bowl in the sink?" "Yes, sir, it was," because everything is yes, sir, no, sir.
You have to call him sir?
Oh, absolutely. You know how I answered the phone? "Colonel Max's quarters, Rudy Maxa speaking. May I help you, please, sir?" And I said, "Dad, what if it's a woman calling?" "Doesn't matter. May I help you, please, sir?"
That's very inhibiting for the rest of your life. But
Anyway, he made me go out and put soap detergent in the thing and rush it down, at 11 o'clock at night and put it away and dry it and put it up. And
Yeah, but
so
what
I've
about
always
Rudy
kept
Maxa, a grown man whose father is no longer around?
Very clean kitchen. I've got a very clean kitchen. I don't wash my car that often, frankly.
But what happens if I come and mess up your kitchen?
I clean it up. I clean other people's kitchens up.
Obsessively.
I come out here for Thanksgiving with my friends Andy and Kathy Blue because in college, I put myself through college working in the school cafeteria, and they paid 10 cents an hour more if you did the big pots and pans in the back. I mean, huge, big industrial pots and pans. So, of course, nobody likes to do pots and pans in the real world. But to me, what you cook Thanksgiving turkeys in and what most people have in their homes are so tiny compared to the ones I used to. It's a piece of cake for me. So when I come to the Blues, I'm the guy who does the cleanup, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it because it's also a finite process. My wife and I and other girlfriends and I would have a dinner party for 12 people. There'd be a lot of wine glasses and things that need to be washed by hand, and I wouldn't go to bed till they were done. Not because I felt they had to be clean before I went to bed, but because it gave me some satisfaction staying up late, hand washing all these, putting them away, and just being done with it. Because as a journalist, you always have these stories that are sort of half done out here or not quite finished, or you can't reach that person, or the story's not working. Dishes, you can do them. They're done. They're put away. You go, accomplish something.
Yeah, but you can look on that, though, as two things. Firstly, yes, there is tremendous satisfaction in that. But on the other hand, you are still trying to please your father.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm pleased. I don't like spots on the kitchen counter and dirty dishes out when I walk by. I mean, I live alone, and after I've had lunch, I clean everything up instantly, and then I get back to work.
Do you think, though, that fear, which is really deep-seated because it comes from your father.
I wonder if it's a fear, though, or just
yeah. The basis of it is fear.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't want to get yelled at, right?
Well, of course you don't. But I wonder whether that, I'm going to use the word inhibited, but I don't necessarily mean inhibited, but inhibited where you went in life after that. That you could only rise to a certain level because you feared being criticized beyond that level.
I don't know. I try to bring that. I don't think the word's obsessive because I'm not compulsive obsessive. I'm not going back to make sure the kitchen's clean all the time. I try to bring that to my reporting. I would watch reporters at the Post who are sloppy. These are supposed to be one of the world's best newspapers. And I try to read every line and go, did I get that for sure? And the number of times people have said, a lot of people wrote about me, but you actually got the facts all right. That pleases me. So I try to bring that same attention to detail to other things as well, I hope.
Well, I would say that's why you're successful. But I think my question relates to where you would be if you were sloppy.
Gosh, I don't know. I have no idea.
If you just broke the rules and you let yourself go.
No, I think I am fairly conventional in that regard. Yeah, I know. I don't know where I'd be. But there have been times when I've thought that if I did bend the rules a little more, I might have won that one, whatever that one is.
Because that's why I think I would irritate you on a TV show, but not in a good way. Yeah. Because I think I wouldn't want to offend anyone. Philosophy is so different to yours.
Yeah, it could be.
That it would just either crush you, embarrass you, or drive you nuts.
Well, those two guys made that musical out of it, and the movie and all that, The Odd Couple, we'd be, might be
it's like The Odd Couple for travel, maybe.
Yeah, right, exactly, right.
All right, we're going to
constantly going around apologizing for you after you leave the pub. Look, I'm really sorry.
I am the guy who has to write back virtually to every party I've ever been to the following morning and go, right, I'm sorry.
Whatever I did, I'm really sorry. Let me apologize now.
Anyway, round one. This is the experience.
Aren't we done with the questions? That wasn't it?
This is about what you've learned over the years about yourself, about life and its meaning. Number one, give me one major thing you would have done very differently or not done at all if you'd known how your life was going to turn out?
Oh, gosh. I mean, this is such a petty thing, though. Real estate, it's money, you know. As a friend who said he's never seen a hearse pulling a safe. I have been fairly generous in property settlements with my ex-wife, with a former girlfriend, with another former girlfriend. I just figure, you know, I don't want to fight. I don't like conflict. I saw a lot of it in my parents' life after my dad's stroke. I mean, a lot of conflict. And I hate conflict. And so when it comes to...
So you've become a peacekeeping force, basically?
Yeah, I'm a mediator. I'm definitely a mediator.
Are you a soft touch?
I don't think so, no. But in cases where conflict looms, Now, I mean, in the last case of a girlfriend, I did have to go to court to protect some property rights. But I'm sorry that I can't come out to L.A. and buy a place now. And I should be able to at this age.
But do you think,
I've made a lot of money.
Do you think women see that in you?
No.
And go, this guy would be a doormat?
No, I'm not that easygoing. No.
So you would have looked after your own interests better,
Probably a little
is what
more,
you would have
yes.
done differently.
Right.
Then, of course, so much money went on your children, and you can't protect yourself against that because that's just being a good, loving father.
That doesn't bother me at all. I wouldn't have changed that.
That was a good investment.
Yes, I think so.
Have they turned out okay?
Yeah, they're really great kids.
Question 2. Nominate one characteristic about yourself that you would have changed if you could, which could have made you a better person to know.
Maybe a better person to know.
Yes.
One characteristic. I mean, friends have told me, look, if Attila the Hun came to the door, I'd invite him in and serve him dinner. Or as one girlfriend said, you suffer all kinds of fools too much. You spend too much time with people who are total idiots.
Is that why you hang out with me?
No, I like you a lot. I'm not hanging out with you because it's a horrifying scene.
You just like to see a festering mess in front of you and feel superior.
I remember I did a magazine piece on private eyes in Washington. This was back when, you know, getting photographs of your cheating spouses still counted in court and so on. And I remember interviewing this one guy, and he used to say, you know, betrayal of business partners and cheating spouses. It was an endless laundry list of wretched behavior by human beings. And I said, you know, how do you have any friends anymore? And he said, you know, I figure none of us can stand to see all of our personal lives on the front page of the Washington Post. So when I meet somebody I sort of like, I just take 20% off the top and set it over there.
What does that mean?
It means, you know, this person may disappoint you or others at times. They may have bad habits. They may do things you don't like them to do. But are you not going to know that person because of those? Or do you just realize we all have things that turn off other people or we shouldn't be doing? So.
As I'm getting older, I am less and less tolerant of that.
I think that's true. So
I don't cream things off the top. I go, you know, I actually can't be bothered with that.
Yeah, I have less time for this.
Peace of mind is way more important than trying to somehow navigate around people's
or fix
bad
this
or
person who you hardly even know. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't fix people.
No, I agree. I think as you get older, time becomes more precious.
So what was the characteristic then that you would have hung out less with people who were losers?
Yeah, I would have spent less time on people who really, I was just a voyeur of their lives, and you know, and it really didn't matter. Maybe I learned something. Maybe someday I'll write a novel, and one of their tics or characteristics I'll work in. But generally, I spent too much time with people who really weren't relevant to my life and didn't really interest me all that much.
Did you lose because of that, or did you just waste time?
Time. I could have spent more time with my son or daughter just reading a good book.
Did your children ever feel that you weren't around?
I don't think so.
Because you're the travel guy.
No, I don't think so. They traveled with me often, and even after my wife and I were separated and she had major, I'd get them every other weekend and Wednesday night. We'd travel together in the summer. We live very close to each other, and she and I, to this day, get along well. My son, who's 32 and lives in San Francisco, if I say to him, that's a stupid idea or whatever, or if he does something and I criticize him, he'll hang his head down and go, well, Dad, I'm from a broken home. Yeah. And he's, of course, joking, and it's very funny. I wish I could say that.
Question 3. What's one lesson in life that you were once told was true, but which you found not to be true at all?
A lesson in life that I was told was true and found out not to be true. Gosh, I don't know. They're all small lessons. You know, my father really wanted me to go to a military academy, and there was never a chance in hell I was going to go to a military academy. And he wanted me to be an electrical engineer, so he made me take math. He made me take accounting in college. The only bad grade I got in college.
Well, that's not a lesson, though.
Yeah, it wasn't a lesson, but he was saying this is going to serve you well if you become an electrical engineer. Well, by the time I graduated from college, there were too many electrical engineers, you know.
So the lesson was that you'll actually be valuable if you work hard towards this, and it turns out...
Right.
Well, somebody else said that the major lesson they were taught that was completely wrong was that you have to try hard in life. Everybody, like particularly the older generations, go, you've got to work hard, you've got to strive.
If it's not hard, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
Right.
And the truth is you really don't. Life will fall into your lap if you just relax.
And if you have a talent and follow that, you'll do just fine. You know, the quality will out.
Yeah,
no,
and you
right.
don't need to strive, and you don't need to sacrifice your health or your well-being or your
personal
friendships
relationships, right.
for getting somewhere. Right. You can actually be happy without $1 million. You can be happy without that corner
And you don't have to
office.
get an A on every term paper.
No,
Right.
no. And
that's
people
true.
don't realize that. It's a very American thing.
It is
that you're
American.
supposed to be number one. Well, being number 3, or in my case, like number 4,050, was never a bad thing. Looking up from the bottom of the pile was always kind of fun, rather than trying to maintain being the top of the heap,
Oh, you are too tough on yourself.
I don't think so. Question 4. Outside of things like family and friends, what has been the greatest joy of being alive?
It's travel. It's discovering there are people who do things to get to the same end in an entirely different way in life. People can live with a whole lot less and be even happier. In India, I really saw it. We'd go out into the desert and people, living on a hard mud floor with like 4 pots and 2 pans and kids and no electricity at night. And they were like, just so happy to see you and come on in and have a cup of tea with us. And it's like, wow.
It's an entirely different value system.
Exactly.
Which makes you think maybe we got it wrong, right?
Yeah, I'm going, what am I worried about whether my sport coat is cut like everybody else's this season or whatever?
But when you go to India, are you tempted to just clean up their house?
And these were clean houses. I mean, they were clean.
Okay.
Yes, India, yes. I attempted to clean. Yeah.
Question 5. What is your greatest sadness or disappointment about the way life has unfolded for you?
Greatest sadness or disappointment. I'm not unhappy professionally. I have my health. I have no aches or pains or anything. I guess I can think of a couple of personal relationships that I wish had worked out. In one case, I'm best friends with that person, and I've probably been in love 5 times in life, and I'm close to 4 of the 5, and I'm sorry about the 5th.
Would you marry again?
I think I would. Yes, I'm not.
Are you that much of a sucker that you'll go through this again?
I'm not averse to it, but I'm not looking for it either.
Sometimes we do things like travel a lot or do jobs that involve us being away a lot because we are essentially quite lonely.
Do you know Peter
and we seek
Greenberg?
a
Have you met
companion.
Peter Greenberg?
No.
Earlier on in his life, he was running away from things. He was endlessly on airplanes, still is. And I was thinking he was running away from a lot of stuff.
What's he running away from, do you think?
I don't know. That I don't know. I mean, he's had a couple good solid girlfriends. He's never been married. He has no children. And early on, I met him 30 years ago.
So he's probably running away from himself, really.
Yes.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah,
Do you think Rick Steves runs away from himself?
No. I don't know Rick that well. I don't think so.
But we're stirring a cauldron of envy here, I feel.
No.
Oh, I am.
No. You would not.
You do what you want, Rudy. I'm stirring a cauldron of envy over here.
I do not. You and I, neither of us would want to travel as much as Peter does.
No. Or Rick.
Yeah, I don't know how much Rick travels now.
Let me see, I look at these people, and honestly, I don't want to run a tour company. I don't want to travel that much.
I don't want a tour
I don't want to
company.
be on planes all the time. I'm not running away from my life. I have a great life. And this is why I think, possibly, I didn't fail as a travel guy because I wasn't really doing it in that kind of committed way. But the reason it didn't matter to me was because I didn't need to. Because I'm, in some ways, very comfortable with the choices I've made and who I am and what I've done. And if I died tomorrow, some of the key achievements that I can look back on, they're not massive universal things, but they're pretty good. I'm very pleased with them. So I don't have that running away from myself. So now I can be contented in my own skin without necessarily having to run away. Maybe that's why I don't travel as much anymore.
Well, I agree. I mean, I don't travel unless it's work or to see family or friends.
So you're not running away from stuff anymore. Did you ever, though?
No, I never did. No.
You were never that guy?
No, not at all. I was always perfectly happy with my life as it was. And I have hundreds of thousands of miles in airlines. I can go anywhere I want, but I don't. I want to travel for a reason, not to get away at all. No.
Right.
I'm perfectly happy living alone, reading and watching.
Are you happy alone?
Yes, I am actually. I've always been happy alone. Would I be happier? Yeah, the right companion. But failing that, I don't want to be with the wrong companion.
No, I agree. In fact, my happiest times have been when you or somebody else sent me on an assignment somewhere on my own. And like I'd be in a piazza in Florence, drinking an orange juice about 9:30 in the morning, and they were hosing down the piazza. And the sky was blue, and the air was fresh. I had some vague notion of what I was going to do, and I had to be at some function tonight to record it or whatever, and that's all it was. And there was a level of peace attained at that moment.
No question.
That I thought, if travel achieves anything, it's this. Being surrounded by beauty, with no pressure, the sensory extravagance of that moment made everything worthwhile.
I couldn't agree more.
Question 6. If you had to
How many questions are there?
248.
Jeez.
I told you to pee before you
I
came
thought
in.
you said
That's why.
you picked 4 numbers. There are only 4
That's
questions.
round 2. Just stop complaining.
All right,
Otherwise,
okay.
we'll never get to the end of it. Question 6. If you had to pass on one piece of advice or wisdom to an impressionable child, what would it be?
I have passed on to my children things as small as, opening the door for an older person or a woman to life isn't fair. Don't expect everything to work out. And when it doesn't, don't freak out because there's always another day. Learn from it and move on. And sometimes you will be screwed in life.
And your children have taken that on board, right?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not part of their day-to-day lives as adults. But, there are all kinds of slights when you're a kid, somebody bullying you or cutting you out of the group, the in-crowd or something. You just, you know what?
Get over it.
Right, get over it. I once had a personal trainer in D.C., and I was complaining that, I didn't really want to do that exercise. And he said, no, stop complaining. If you didn't have the legs to do the exercise, then you can complain. And I was thinking, oh, my God, yeah, there are people who would love to be able to do this exercise and love to have a little burn by doing a squat or whatever.
When I came to Hollywood, I was at a party, and the very first, 4 years, very, very hard here. Getting some kind of established presence was incredibly difficult, I found. And I was at a party and I spoke to this guy and I said, it's not going well. I don't know. I may have to just go back to England. And I had a whole litany of things to complain about. And he said, well, here's the thing about that. This is Hollywood. Nobody invited you. Nobody's making you stay. If you don't like it, leave. And he turns around and walks off.
Tough luck,
and it stuck in my head that, and I thought, and that could be anywhere. Nobody invited you. Nobody's making you stay. If you don't like it, leave. And I thought, that is how I'm going to live my life.
It reminds me of the advice, when I did the Savvy Traveler on public radio, now that I'm doing for a commercial radio travel show. I mean, there's nothing worse than starting a travel show Saturday morning when some plane has gone down and 240 people have been killed, right?
Yeah.
And I remembered I was doing Savvy Traveler and that Swiss Air flight had just gone down over Nova Scotia and all these people were killed. And I'm like, oh. And there's a writer, he now writes for Vanity Fair, and he writes on all kinds of subjects, but he used to write on aviation named William Langevisci. Great writer. And he was I know he's a commercial pilot or a cargo pilot, but he flew big planes around the world. And I had him on right after the crash. I said, what do you tell people when something like this happens? And I thought he was going to do the usual, well, you're more likely to by a lightning strike or something like that. All those things that I many times said. And he said, I tell him, listen, who among us gets to choose when we're going to die? If we could do that, none of us would walk out the door and get in a car tomorrow because the odds are better than flying in a plane that you're going to get killed in a car accident. We don't get to choose. It happens.
You don't choose your birth and you don't choose your death.
Planes go down.
Yeah.
You're not going to go anywhere in the world because a plane might go down, and there's certainly people who don't get it on planes for that reason because they don't want anything to happen.
Was there any place you wouldn't go because of that?
Places in the world now?
I mean, you're not going to drop in on Syria and say...
No, I'm not a war reporter. No, because I'd bumble into a bullet in, a week, or I'd get kidnapped and tortured. And,
We just see your mugshot on CNN as this guy was so great. He had a PBS show, and now look at him. Question 7. Why do you think you were put on the planet? Are you satisfied that you fully justified your time here?
I hope I've enlightened some people, whether it was about politics or whether it's about travel. But I think as a parent that you think about that. And you think that I've given the world a couple of really cool people to continue the world perhaps in a better direction.
And the reason you were put on the planet was to give the world other people?
No. But the last part of your question is what?
Are you satisfied that you fully justified your time here?
No, I don't think I was put on the planet to give the world children. But when I look back on my time, what I'm proudest of is having raised a couple of good kids. So I didn't go out to do that. But as you get older and you look back on your children and you see how nice they are and how well they're doing and how sweet they are and how they're raising good kids, then you go, I did something right.
So why were you put on the planet?
I have no idea. It's just so entirely random. We all know that. I mean, I don't know why I was put on the planet.
We all know that. I don't agree with that at all. I think we're all put on the planet for a reason. And we all spend our lives trying to figure out what that reason is and fulfill it.
I'm not terribly introspective. I don't want to try to figure out why I'm here or any of that stuff. I'm not that kind of guy.
Oh, stop. You must have thought, why am I on the planet? Everybody goes, why am I here?
I had never have.
In your deepest despair, you never look inwards and go, what is my purpose?
No, I mean, I've been in deep despair when I look at the situation and my life, but I don't think, why am I here? I've never thought that, no.
You see, this is what I despair over myself.
I'm just that superficial.
No, it's not superficial. It's intellectualizing away emotional avenues rather than exploring them. Because if you were to look at that, you might decide that your time here was futile or something. You go, so I'm not even going to look at it, so I'll just move on and live my life.
Oh, I don't mind learning lessons from things in the past, but I don't think about why I'm on the planet. That's such a huge question. I can't even begin to think about the answer to that. I don't know why.
It's too huge? I mean,
it is to me.
You can't just answer and go to do travel shows and reveal to people the value of travel.
Seems like a pretty trivial reason to be on. I mean,
it's all you've done, really. I mean,
it is all I've done.
25, 30 years.
It is all I've done. You're exactly right. And if that's a good enough answer for you, I'm happy to give it to you. But I would like to give you a much more cosmic answer, and I can't.
But you haven't even thought about it. So in that case, question 8 is going to be a real bummer.
What's that?
What's your legacy? When your biography is written, I don't know who would do that, but let's just say
Nobody,
it's written,
but, right.
What will it say you did to make the world a better place?
There's small things to me. Changing some laws involving usury laws in the United States, say changing some laws involved perhaps a better political machine.
You mean back in the day you did this?
Yeah. And making some people maybe go out and travel and make new connections and fall in love or change their lives. I'd like that to be a legacy.
So your legacy is you impacted complete strangers.
Right.
But would they ever know that you did that? Would they ever account for you and go,
Well,
Rudy did
I run into people who come up to me in the public and say, we love your shows, and because of your show, my wife and I went here and it changed our lives. And now we're going to move there.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That happens a lot.
Well, maybe that was your purpose on the planet, to do that, to make connections, to help people fulfill their own lives.
You've articulated it better than I could then.
Well, because I thought about it. You've not even thought about it.
No, I told you I'm that superficial.
Question 9. In what way are you still searching?
I do not want to be alone all the rest of my years, so I'm not searching. I don't go on social media looking for mates or something because I sort of think you meet someone naturally, at least I always have. So I think I'm looking for a companion to share part of life with.
Is it possible that one day you could have an epiphany and you could go, I wonder why we're here, or I have a vision of this, or was it Larry Flint's or John the Baptist or something?
Yes, he did. He was on his private jet over Iowa, and he was with the President of the United States' sister, Ruth Carter Stapleton. Jimmy Carter was then the president. And she had been sort of working at trying to get him to God, and he somehow, on this Learjet, fell to his knees and told me in a phone conversation from the radio phone, and so did Ruth. They both called me at my desk at the Washington Post. I wrote the story that day that the president's sister had converted Larry Flint into a God-fearing man.
But he saw John the Baptist.
He saw John the Baptist, and John the Baptist told him that, Larry, you can change your life and be a better person, and everything's going to be great.
So if it can happen to Larry Flint, why not you?
Yeah, well, Larry soon gave that up after somebody shot him, but yeah.
That whole thing went out of the window when he was shot, right?
It did. I mean, he quickly convened in Colorado a meeting to How to Change Hustler into a magazine that God would like to read. And the sales just plummeted, and then someone tried to assassinate him, and he was totally out of it for years. But right after he was assassinated, his wife, who was watching the money roll out the door like water, went to the staff and said, okay, we're going back to what we did best because this isn't working. So no more naked spreads of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden.
Question 10. What, in your view, is the bigger purpose of life? Why are we here?
Oh, my gosh. I don't read all those books you must read.
The
bigger purpose of life.
Everybody thinks about this. Why are we here?
Gosh, I don't think about why are we here. We're here.
But why?
I don't know. But I know it's a big question. I know it's an endless question. People write tomes
But your
about.
inquiring mind, you have this amazing inquiring mind that has led you all over the world, and you don't look at this planet and go, I wonder why we as a species are here.
If I wondered it, I never came to an answer or even had a glimmer of an answer.
You've never been tempted to go, I wonder why. Let's find out.
No, I haven't.
And what would tempt you into that line? Rick Steves doing it.
No, if I thought it was a good story. I don't know.
It's the biggest story
It's
there
the biggest
is.
story. Right, exactly. There are people better qualified to handle that story. I don't cover sports. I don't follow sports at all. I mean, if I can't follow sports, how am I going to handle the why we're here in the world?
Okay, well, on that despairing, miserable, wretched
we made it
end,
through round
we're going to
one.
end round 1 and go on to round 2.
I hope it's not sports questions because I don't know.
Hi guys, it's me again. I was at a party about 4 nights ago talking to a guy about the democratization of the media and how anybody can do anything now. There are no limits, there's nobody telling you what you can and can't do. Anything is possible. The only problem with providing content is that it's all free. And that's great if you're a consumer, but if you're producing the stuff, it makes it very, very difficult because there's no money coming in return for people actually getting the content. And we're so used to this that we take the whole thing for granted. So if you feel like you've enjoyed this episode of the Life Quiz and you'd like to help with crowdfunding it, then just go to cashpeters.com, my website, cashpeters.com, and there's a donate button. Click on the donate button and you can maybe contribute to the cost of running the show. I'm a huge fan of this new democratization, but it can only continue in the sense of providing really quality content if we all give something, however small, to the shows we like. So if you want to do that, cashpeters.com, click on the donate button, and provide me with an incentive to keep on doing the show. That's it. I've said my piece. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your donations, for those who've sent them. And it's back to the live quiz. Okay, we're back with round two with Rudy Maxa, the savvy traveler, and God knows what else. The man has achieved so much. This is the blind round. 15 questions. You get to choose 5 of them without knowing what they are. Choose a number between 1 and 15, please.
Yeah, right. Number 1.
What's the biggest curveball life has thrown you?
Oh, God. I thought this was we were off the philosophical stuff.
You didn't want sports. You didn't want philosophy.
Biggest curveball.
Life has thrown
Well,
you.
I think my dad's stroke. It changed my childhood drastically and changed my family's life.
When he died, did you feel a sense of enormous liberation? Or did you mourn him?
I did mourn him. I felt a sense of liberation for him because he suffered from dementia and paranoia his last decade of his life. And I gave a eulogy at the funeral. He left his entire estate, not to my mother, his wife, or his children. He left it to some cousin who's an idiot. So there's lots of room for resentment if you choose that.
Was he a wealthy man?
No, he left $1.4 million estate. My mother was a stockbroker. Fortunately, had made some money of her own, so nobody went hungry, but wouldn't have hurt. But I said at his eulogy, I said, he's a very difficult man, and there were a lot of very difficult times. But he had a note from his doctor. I mean, it wasn't his fault that he acted the way he did the last half of his life. He lived a long time. He outlived most of his compatriots, and there were odds on that he was going to die on the operating table, and he didn't. They went in with metal and touched parts of his brain, and suddenly he couldn't visualize numbers anymore. He had a great sense of direction. He couldn't do that. There's a lot of things he couldn't do, and then he had these rages and this anger and this stuff that didn't make any sense. And after his stroke, and when he came home, I would decide to go out sledding. Don't go sledding. You might hit your head. It was very weird times. That was a huge curveball.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
Another question.
7.
What, where, or who is your refuge?
My refuge are my granddaughters. Because
There was something you run to at times of trouble?
When I am with them, it's so comforting. It's so much fun. Nothing else matters. It just sort of, I don't have to think about anything else.
How old
it
are
doesn't
they?
matter. 5 and 7. It's all consuming, and they totally adore you. There's no game playing in the bad sense of the word.
No agenda.
No agenda, just happy to be with you. Let's read a story. Let's read a book. Let me read you a book. It's just wonderfully simple. I mean, they're in London, and about every 2 or 3 months I'll go over there just to hang with them.
Does that hurt that they're a long way away? Wouldn't you rather have them wherever you live right now?
But they don't really know I'm far away. They say, Grandpa, why don't you come over right now? And I remember saying when my one was 3, I said, well, you've been to America now, Eliza. It's a long trip. You have to get in the airplane and fly a long ways. And she looked at me like, well, go find an airplane and get on it. And you know what I did? After we were done with the conversation, I said, yeah, I'm self-employed. I can do my radio show from over in London. I don't really have to be here. I'm going to just go find an airplane and get on it. And I did.
Fabulous.
And it's that simplicity that I like, So.
Well, that's good. But I just want to define the thing as a refuge, though, just because you can escape the pain of the world by...
Yeah, I don't think about articles I might be late. I don't think somebody who's pissed off at me about something. Not that many people are pissed off, but, I don't think about calls I have to make.
Yeah, I get that. That makes
social
total
obligations,
sense.
anything.
Yeah, totally. Another number.
13.
Are you a beacon or a light reflected?
I think I'm more of a light reflected than I would like to be, but I think I'm also a beacon. I think a reporter naturally is because you're
Well, you see,
trying to
I worry about the reporter thing, and always have. Even when I was classed as a journalist, I was being more of a sheep than a shepherd.
that you weren't delivering anything new that somebody else hadn't delivered 100 times
That
to.
I was just not participating. There's something to be said for being the creator.
Right.
The guy who goes out there and says, hey guys,
I have an
I'm going
idea.
to act, I'm going to sing, I'm going to build, I'm going to be the Steve Jobs of this situation, as opposed to, oh, look what Steve Jobs is doing.
But I think also that, life, and this is not certainly original with me, life is a lot of stories. It's stories that teach people and so on. And as a journalist, you're often in I don't know if it's an envied position, but certainly a valuable position of being able to give shape and form to things that are happening and tell a story in a way that somebody reads it and goes, whoa. Particularly with magazine pieces where you actually can consider other different points of view and so on. But you can tell a narrative and maybe something that happened over either a while back or over the course of 8 years that people sort of remember little fragments of. I love reading stories where it sort of brings it all together and you go, oh, I see how that happened.
Okay, another number, please.
14.
How has your definition of success changed as you've grown older and wiser? That's predicated on the fact that you may possibly have grown older and wiser.
Or may possibly understand success or tasted it.
Well, you have. I mean, you've been very successful. So how has your definition of success changed as you've grown older and wiser?
I think when you're younger, I mean, 21, 22, 20, in your 20s, you measure success in whether you could buy a house for if you have a family, or whether you could afford a better car, in rather superficial ways. And I think I know as I've gotten older, success is friends. Having more than one or two, which most Americans say that's all they have, of people they could turn to in desperate straits and expect them to open the door and welcome you in. I'm pretty good at keeping in touch with people, and I know a lot of people very, very well who aren't. He's never called me. I said, well, why don't you call him? Particularly if you like them that much. So I count success in friends who are real friends, and you don't have to talk to them for 2 months, and you pick up, or 3 months, and you pick up right where you left off, or they're saying, look, I got to see you. Let's get together.
What's really weird about that is that so much in America is based on success. So many people make millions out of advising people how to become successful. Mm-hmm. And in the end, it's never that stuff they're trying to make you do or be or become that will make you feel successful. The thing that will make you feel successful is peace of mind, people being kind to you, somebody to love, companionship.
No question.
Home, food. The things that are so basic to life.
Right.
It's complete inversion of what everybody sells you as success.
And if you can equate, to some extent, happiness with success, which I think you can, there was a landmark study that found that once you make over $75,000 a year, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't make you any happier that you make 150, 300, 400, 500. That 75,000 is about the level where people go, I'm okay. Now, of course, it costs more to live in New York and L.A., so it might be a different number. But basically that adding piles of more money on the top of your money pile doesn't really bring you the satisfaction or the feel of success or happiness that the other things like friendship, as you say, and companionship might.
And it doesn't guarantee you a decent sleep at night or peace of mind or an easy conscience or anything. None of that does.
The friends I stay with here live in a multi-million-dollar house on Amalfi Drive in Pacific Palisades, which is apparently – Amalfi Drive is apparently to residential drives as Rodeo is to
retail.
Commercial. Right. Steven Spielberg's right up the street. Whoopi Goldberg's next door. Conan O'Brien. I mean, it's just endless.
Right.
So she likes to walk in the morning. She's older than I. So I said, I'll walk with you this morning. Let's go for a walk. Each house more incredible than the other. And she would say, well, there's that actor who has run off with the nanny. And so he's rented this house next door that belongs to this. It was story after story of some of household names, some of just people who are incredibly wealthy, and the demons they're facing. And, none of which most of us have to. Right. But a lot of it is a result of accumulated wealth. If you don't have enough to have a nanny, you're not going to have an affair with a nanny. You go by and you think, these people, because everything's
superb.
manicured.
I know.
The cars are spotless, and they're all Teslas and BMWs and Mercedes and Jaguars, and every flower is in the right place, and the house is perfect.
It's all fluff.
What a great life they have.
It's all fluff.
And then you have a neighbor who knows a lot of stuff and goes, over here and here, and that's what's happening here. And these guys, the kids, have been on drugs forever.
Okay, last question in this round. Number, please.
All right, 9.
Who have you yet to forgive?
The answer is no one, and I'll tell you why. Well, I mean, I certainly have had people that I had to forgive. But just last week, I was listening on public radio to an interview with Rabbi Harold Kushner, the author of the book When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And he was giving a speech. He was talking about people in his congregation who come in and say, my husband just ran off with a younger woman, and you're not paying me enough child support. What can I do to get even? He said, well, why do you want revenge? Why do you want? Because it'll make me feel good. He says, no, it won't, because then you're down at his level. He is off in Barbados with his new girlfriend having a fabulous time, not even thinking about you. And you're here in New Jersey, where his synagogue is, I think, having a hate-on over this guy. It's controlling your mind. Get him out of your mind. Revenge just poisons your mind. Doesn't hurt him. You've got to move on. You've got to start thinking how to make your life different or better now, and get that out of your mind.
Forgiving is about you, not about the other person.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what happens to them, as long as you get it out of your system. It's immensely powerful. But usually it's parental or partners or wives or husbands.
Yeah, mine
or
was
whatever.
partner. Yeah, right.
Right. So, I would have thought if I'd had to guess at yours, it would have been that this person that you had a problem with and lost your property to or whatever.
Right.
That was the one you had to forgive.
Yes. Well, I had actually forgiven her before that, but it sealed my decision.
So if I gave you a dagger and we suspended all the laws for killing, you could just go and kill her, you wouldn't do that?
No, my God, no. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Or would you like me to do it?
Yeah, could you do it, please?
I've seen movies where this works. All right, on that note, end of round 2. We're back with Rudy Maxa, who is really just got to go because he's protesting so much about the length of this quiz. Round 3 is the wrap-up
It's forcing
round.
me to be introspective, and I
cannot believe it. Honestly, how am I ever going to have a conversation with you now? I know you don't ever go inside yourself and look within. I can't believe that.
I know.
Round 3,
Yes.
The wrap-up round. Question 1. You're rushed to the hospital. Doctors say you have 48 hours left to live. What would you do in those 48 hours that you've not done so far?
48 hours. What would I have done that I
What would you
haven't done so
drag
far?
out of your bucket list?
48 hours. I would like to hike more in state parks or forests or something, and I don't seem to do much of that. I mean, I've always lived in cities and not had a lot of time to do that. Just recently, I went to a gathering of people in Montana at a dude ranch, and it was just so gorgeous, and I had a sinus infection, and I wanted to go hiking. And so I never went. And I was there 3 days. I kept going, is this going to end? Can I go now? So I would maybe go to that Montana dude ranch and just go out hiking. Just be somewhere where it's very still and quiet.
I think I would do drugs.
Have I?
No, I would.
Oh.
I think I would just do drugs. All the harmful stuff. Because I've lived such a healthy life, essentially.
Yeah, me too. I did opium once and loved it in Thailand, in the hills of Thailand once I did it. It gave me such a sense of well-being that if I could take some opium with me while
the dude
going
ranch.
through the dude ranch.
That'd be great. I would do all the things, all the narcotics that people say make you feel great.
Right.
If it was definitely 48 hours, that's how I would spend my last 2
point.
days.
Yeah, good
just drink, eat crappy food, just be debauched in the last 2 days. I
Right,
think.
get Big Macs, but a nice bottle of Bordeaux.
Oh, I don't think I'd touch my... Even if I were dying, I wouldn't have a Big
I
Mac.
know,
There's no way that's going to happen. Question 2. What do you consider to be a universal truth?
Isn't this like some of the other questions you're asking about?
No, this is a completely different one.
Yeah, I see.
Because
It's
the
a
only
universal
thing it
truth.
has in common is that it actually asks you to be introspective.
Right, a universal truth. I would like to say that we all, because you hear this all the time, everybody wants the same things out of life. They want their children to do well. They want to have their health. They want to do well. I don't necessarily believe that. I think I credit ISIS with a little bit. I don't think they want the same thing out of life. They wouldn't go blow themselves up regularly or cause people to blow themselves
Well,
up.
somebody's made the mistake of telling them that the
This
next
is-
life is better than this one.
Right, they're all those
And so
virgins.
why bother living this one when there's so much to look forward to?
Right.
Nobody's actually revealed to them the fact you just die.
Right, exactly. Well, that's what I mean, that everybody doesn't want the same thing.
Right.
You know, some people want to go to heaven and think they're going to have 28 virgins falling all over them or whatever. I would like to say that, but I don't believe that.
So what is the
So
universal
what is
truth?
the
that you
universal
believe?
truth? I suppose it's a grim one, but we're all dying, and at some point it's going to just end.
Where do you think we go to?
After death?
Yeah.
I don't think there is anything after death. Dust to dust. I mean, I just think it's over. That's it.
What do you think is inside you? What do you think is that spark of the divine spirit or whatever? What do you think is this animating force within you?
Well, I think we leave that behind. I don't think we take it with us, so I don't think there's anything afterwards. I hope we have...
No, it's the reverse. We leave our body behind. Our animating force rejoins the greater...
Right. Much better put. Yes, right.
You could buy into that, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. But I would never know it. We would never know it.
Yeah, but we
right,
never know.
right,
And this is the
exactly.
point. But the idea that you go to heaven or hell and you live in a different place and you get virgins is the most ridiculous thing on the planet. Okay, and the final question, who are you really?
I think that from time to time we all have a secret life. So that who we portray ourselves or who we even like to think of ourselves as is not entirely accurate. So I think it's a very mixed bag question of who we are. I hope that I am someone who has never hurt anyone, consciously hurt anyone. I mean, I'm not just physically, but emotionally, and I probably have. I suppose we can't go through life without doing that. But that I'm somebody who is considerate, plays fair, and wants the best for everybody and is not prone to schadenfreude, which I don't think I am. Well, sometimes I am.
But I think you are certainly one of the most professional people I've ever worked with.
Well, thank you.
You are certainly one of the kindest and most generous people I've ever worked with, which is what people say about you behind your back too. That you're just one of the kindest and most generous people. I wither inside at the thought of your newsletter. If only I hadn't unsubscribed. But it's
Not
true.
too late.
But you wouldn't have done that to me.
No, I wouldn't
Because
have, but
you-
I might not have read it either if I was really busy. Because as you say, we all get so much. Although you're so entertaining, I probably would. Yeah, I would have read yours. Make you feel even worse.
Now I feel terrible. Rudy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cash.
There he goes. Didn't I tell you? Wonderful, wonderful man. Talented, entrepreneurial, kind, loving, generous. He might know absolutely nothing about why he's here, but some of us are darn glad he is. Anyway, check out his TV show, Rudy Maxa's World, and also his radio show called Rudy Maxa's World, which last year won the Lowell Thomas Gold Award, which I'm assuming is prestigious. If you're interested in knowing what it's like to be a travel reporter and what it was like to work on the Savvy Traveler show specifically, I wrote a book about it quite a few years ago now called Gullible's Travels, which also won an award, the Ben Franklin Award, for the cover. Until next time, thank you so much for listening, and have a great time. Bye-bye.